when we stop drinking, we're not just removing alcohol. We may be feeling that disconnection and loss around an entire collection of stories around how we see ourselves, how others have seen us, and about who we were. And so this helps explain a little bit about why someone can want to stop drinking, but still feel that resistance, that tug. So the brain isn't necessarily saying, I need alcohol, but it can be in that very subtle way saying, this is who we are.
Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion, learn the truth behind the alcohol myths, and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge.
Well, hey everyone, it's Terry back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast, and I am delighted to spend time with you today. I just love that these conversations help us consider who we are with and without alcohol. And today we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into that very topic as we explore how our identity can shift and ultimately support us as we move from someone who perhaps is considering drinking less, not drinking at all, into this beautiful place of being an alcohol free woman and living alcohol free. And so I think that one of the things that can really happen is that we often think becoming alcohol free is just about changing our behavior. And rightfully so, because we use terms like, I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to drink less. If I could just moderate, if I could drink normally, if I could drink like her or him. And so there's a lot of identity that is wrapped up in the behavior. If I drink too much, that's a certain identity. If I drink and it makes me more fun, that's a certain identity. And so the really rich question is what happens when I stop drinking alcohol? And how does that impact how I see myself, how others see me? And the beautiful thing is that not just becoming alcohol free, but staying alcohol free, living alcohol free has much more to do with changing or reclaiming our identity. And the truth is that when we focus on identity, we can find that it's much easier for us to live in alignment with those values that reflect that identity, and choosing to drink or not drink becomes part of that identity. So the identity work that happens for women throughout our lives, we are constantly shifting from, a young woman to maybe a bride, a mother, a career woman, somebody who is now um, mothering and maybe caring for elderly parents, and whether we find ourselves using alcohol to enhance that identity or sometimes to close off, to shut down that identity. I remember the first time someone shared that their glass of wine at the end of the day was the signal that mom was off duty. And so, all the ways that alcohol has been entangled with our identity, these are the very things that we can connect to when we start to use identity to untangle this connection to alcohol. And I think identity and maybe the loss or the restructuring of our identity, the recognition of that new identity, the embracing of that new identity can be part of why we often see or even feel ourselves, that tug around grief. And when we remove alcohol from our life, it can feel very much like a loss. And we can have some fears how other people will see us. And both of those things are inextricably aligned with identity, right? So, how other people see us. Yes, that's an identity piece. And then how we have been using alcohol as part of our identity, the sophisticated one, the best hostess, the fun party girl, the mom who supports her girlfriends over a glass of wine. All of these things become part of that. And so as we embrace these changing identities, we get to see where alcohol can also be part of the evolution. Where, yes, I used to drink, or I drank when I was in my 40s and 50s, but I haven't drank since my mid 50s. And who am I without alcohol? Is one question, but the more powerful question is, who am I now? Who am I becoming? And so, we actually have this opportunity to consider a couple of things. First of all, how alcohol becomes part of our identity early in the game. Even before we realize it. Again, like I said, it can be I'm the sophisticated wine person. I'm the uh, girlfriend who knows all the best party spots. I'm the one who always pours a glass of wine to commiserate with her friends. I throw the most fabulous parties with a curated cocktail list. Whatever that is, when we stop drinking, we're not just removing alcohol. We may be feeling that disconnection and loss around an entire collection of stories around how we see ourselves, how others have seen us, and about who we were. And so this helps explain a little bit about why someone can want to stop drinking, but still feel that resistance, that tug. So the brain isn't necessarily saying, I need alcohol, but it can be in that very subtle way saying, this is who we are. And also, the second thing to really consider is that midlife creates an identity gap with or without alcohol because we are bumping right up against the potential of a change in the way that we parent. Maybe we're becoming an empty nester. Maybe we're becoming a grandparent. And on the other end of that, maybe we're becoming a caregiver for our aging parents, or maybe we're becoming someone walking on this earth without a living parent. And so, even shifts in marriage or health can really impact our identity. And so when our identity shifts, it can feel unsettling. And it's important to recognize that sometimes in these identity shifts, this is where alcohol use can start to ratchet up because it's filling some of that space where we are grieving the loss of an identity, or we're recognizing that, uh, you know, things have shifted and we're on uncertain ground. And alcohol sometimes can provide that familiarity. It can provide ritual. Sometimes it steps in as that reward and relief, something to get to look forward to. And so identity can be a big part of that. And so when we take away alcohol, we might, wonder, well, who else am I? Who am I without alcohol? I remember in my own story, I thought I would be boring and I thought other people would be boring. And so when we think about identity, we want to go deeper than just the roles that we play. Because, we as women wear a lot of different hats, but that's not necessarily our identity, right? And so, uh, as we move through midlife and we bump up against these deeper questions. Brene Brown calls it that midlife reckoning, where the universe says, look, I'm not messing around here. Figure this stuff out. That's to paraphrase because I think she uses a lot of cuss words. But when we have the opportunity to really question our alcohol use, and if we start to consider stepping away, one of the most powerful things we can do to begin the journey, but then even more importantly, to continue, is to really recognize who we are at this point and how alcohol doesn't fit into this identity. And so, as we begin to craft a life that we don't want to escape from, staying alcohol free is that new identity, right? And, when I created the self program, I put it together into a 4-month program so that we could focus 1 month on each of the pillars of know yourself, grow yourself, love yourself, and be yourself. And right off the bat, we see that knowing oneself is where we really connect around, well, what do I hold on to? What has always been centered in my identity? Often those things don't change. Perhaps we were always someone with curiosity, always someone with compassion or passion, always someone who looked out for the little guy. Those identities, connected to our core values and our internal traits, can be that through line that we can start to explore again. And so when we get to know ourselves, we're really looking at, who have I believed myself to be? What parts are actually me? And what if I strip away alcohol and those expectations? What's left? What's at the root, at the center? And then for the second part of that beautiful identity work in the self program, we have grow yourself. So this is where curiosity really shines. Um, and it's not necessarily about becoming the best version of myself. That can feel really exhausting and daunting. And sometimes the bar is so high, we don't even get started. And so, this opportunity to grow ourselves is getting curious about who am I becoming? Um, what is the best part of me that I haven't yet explored or made room for? And midlife is that place where our plate can be really full, but also some things start to come off of our plate. And I know for most of us that when alcohol goes by the wayside, we find ourselves with extra time. And so for me, that place that I really was growing myself was when I first went to nutrition school. What is the part of me that I haven't had a chance to explore yet? The part that wants to learn more, that has a passion to teach and share and bring forward new ideas. And so that know yourself and grow yourself. And then love yourself. So, this is where we get to really consider the identity of being someone who has a practice of self compassion and self care, and recognizing that it's going to take that gentle care for self in order to move away from alcohol. Because at times it can feel hard, and at times we might be challenged, and at times we might find ourselves down the road drinking again. And so the place where we get to love ourselves is that instead of having comparison leading the way, and even comparison to self from our past, we really have the opportunity instead to practice those deep places where we support ourselves from the inside out. And this is where we often can build that beautiful sisterhood, right? So part of our identity can be the women that lift us up, the women that we support. And then the fourth part of that journey in identity with the self program is the is be yourself. And so eventually, where we get to is that alcohol-free living is not something we're constantly doing. It is that underpinning of our identity, of how we live our life, of how we show up. It's that line in the sand that, oh yeah, I am an alcohol-free woman, and therefore everything else bubbles up from that place where I am more connected to the present, more able to self-regulate, more recognition of the patterns that I want to explore, more awareness of stories that had been creating patterns that I want to move from, more opportunities, more curiosity, more spark to live a bigger life. And so, with Be Yourself, this is where we're really living that congruent life. And this is the part where it's so fun to think of identity as that deeper work that we do to know ourselves, grow ourselves, love ourselves, and be ourselves. And when we consider, who am I becoming? How does it connect to who I've always been? And how does it connect to where I see myself growing? I see my future self looking back and considering, yeah, that was a really cool moment when you decided to ditch booze and find yourself. So, those places of identity, of connecting to our knowing. First of all, I don't know that it's possible if alcohol's a part of your daily life because we dial down our intuition and we're just not hearing as clearly how to connect everything. Or we might be hearing, there might be so much noise of shame and disconnect and feeling like we've let ourselves or others down that we can't really hear that beautiful thread of possibility, of excitement about future and where we can grow and who we're becoming and what's next. And so, the beauty is that we don't have to have this all figured out when we stop drinking. It's something that happens little by little as we start to become and then live alcohol free. Our nervous system doesn't change because of our thoughts, it changes through experience. And I was just telling a client today that we often have to act our way to feeling. And so, as we're exploring this beautiful identity piece, we get to question, yeah, how does it feel to see myself in this new way? What am I noticing? And, it happens as we accumulate evidence. And so when we are embracing a challenging situation differently, that's evidence. When we're enjoying ourselves fully without alcohol, that's evidence. When we are no longer getting gifts from our children and family that are wine themed, when we're no longer subscribing to all of the wine clubs, when we don't have a open bar sitting in our home, all of these are pieces that help us start to connect to this new identity. And so, every time we collect new evidence, we're showing our brain and that beautiful inner part of us who I am now. And so we are collecting this little pieces of the puzzle, and we're adding a piece here, and maybe it's a corner piece over there, a foundation. And gradually this new picture of who we are emerges. And we really have this beautiful opportunity to recognize that um, the evolution we experience, and part of why I think alcohol-free women can get so excited and passionate about this is because we're changing that identity. We're morphing into someone who is recognizing the beauty of who we are on the inside. We're recognizing how we move through the world and connect with others. And that identity is something that is going to be a solid part of living alcohol free. And so I just wanted to remind all of us that anytime we're going through transformation, we want to make sure that we're using identity, moving away from, moving toward, integrating with our identity as a piece that can really help finish the puzzle. And so recently, I've been challenging myself around fitness and strength. It's been kind of the missing piece of my puzzle. And what I really have been thinking about is, well, I know how to use discipline and willpower and understanding tools and asking for help. But what I really want to focus on is the identity of someone who is strong, someone who has a healthy practice because of all the other things it brings into my life. And, someone who's fit. And I was thinking the other day, I've spent the last 10 and a half years really learning about who I am alcohol free. And so now I have this beautiful opportunity to apply all of those tools, but maybe most importantly, this identity piece too. How do I use these 10 years to become the strongest, healthiest, fittest version of me? And that can include mental wellness. It can include fit as, recognizing the parts where it's okay to be soft as well as strong. And so when I use identity, I find myself getting just a little bit more excited about what's next. And I can cast that beautiful vision forward and see my future self as strong and fit and grounded and connected to her body in new and exciting ways. And so I want to leave you with just a couple of prompts to think about wherever you are in your journey. If you're considering moving away from alcohol, if you're solidly in the middle of becoming alcohol free, or perhaps you've been living alcohol free and things are feeling maybe a little flat. Really considering this beautiful identity work might just add some spark to you throughout the next weeks. So, the idea is to ask ourselves, who am I becoming without alcohol? What is possible for me? And I think most importantly, what evidence am I creating and can I create for the woman I'm becoming? Because that will serve us well in every area of our life. And sometimes the places where we experience this identity shift are unwanted. Um, a sudden death, a loss, a divorce. And we can feel like the ground is moving beneath us. But once we lean into this identity and we come back to the solid place of knowing what grounds us, what roots us, what lights us up, we will have the ability to move through anything. All right. So again, you don't have to figure out who you are before you do this beautiful work. You become who you are. You become her by living like her, one small moment at a time, one small action at a time, one small gift at a time. So thank you for tuning in today. I am excited for you to consider what is really core for you in this identity work and how will it help you find more of your beautiful midlife and beyond, and perhaps more of your sober edge. All right, I'll see you next time.
I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.